Hey, everybody out there. Joe here. I'm glad you stopped by to check out my video today. And today I'm going to talk about just being needed. Uh, you know what I miss about work most? It isn't the paycheck. I know that probably sounds weird or whatever, but especially after my last video here where I talked about retiring being broke. But there's something else about retirement that I wasn't really prepared for. When you work most of your adult life, people need you. They expect you to show up, they depend you to get things done. And then all of a sudden, one day, nobody's waiting on you anymore. And I wasn't prepared for how different that was going to be, at all when that happened. Think about it. For 30 or 40 years, maybe longer, your life, you had a schedule. You wake up because you got to be somewhere. You got responsibilities. Maybe you're the guy people call when something breaks, or maybe you're the one that knows how to get the job done. But maybe you come because you've been doing it longer than anybody else. They want you there. And whether you love your job or you hate it, you're needed. And I don't think I appreciated that enough while I was still working, because when you're in the middle of it, you're thinking, man, I can't wait till I don't have to do this anymore. And, eventually that day comes. At first it feels pretty good. You ain't got no alarm clock to worry about, no boss, nobody telling you where you got to be. You can drink your coffee, take your time, and think to yourself, this is what I've been waiting for. But, it ain't long, and, the newness wears off, and then it can start feeling different. And, you're not getting that phone call from them people, and nobody's asking, hey, Joe, what do you think we should do here? It's, there's no problem waiting for you to solve it. And suddenly you've got all this time and maybe some sense of purpose. And that's when something hit me, Maybe we don't just retire from a job. Sometimes we accidentally retire from a piece of our identity, and nobody really warned me about that. When people talk about preparing for retirement, what do we usually think about? They talk about their money and their 401k, Social Security, Medicare, all that good shit, And obviously those things matter. Believe me, I've learned my lesson. But what about preparing yourself? What are you going to do when Monday comes and you don't have anywhere to be? Who's going to need you? And more importantly, are you still going to feel needed? I think something that we should be talking about before retirement, just as much as what we got sitting in retirement account, is about what we're going to be doing afterwards. But here's what I started to understand is that, being retired don't mean you're no longer useful. Nobody gets to put an expiration date on what you've learned. You got all kinds of knowledge, you got all kinds of stories, you got all kinds of skills, and maybe just being needed just starts looking different. You might be the one, you might happen to be giving your advice to kids, your kids, or any other kids as far as that goes. Or maybe your grandkids. Maybe you're just wanting to get out there and play ball with them, or teach them how to fish, or whatever it might be. Maybe your neighbor needs a hand with something, and you're around. You can help your neighbor out. It's little things like that. And here's what I wish that somebody had told me years ago, is that your job can end without your purpose ending. You know, I think there's a huge difference between the two, and your company may not need you anymore, and you know your career might be done, but that doesn't mean you're finished. You know, so maybe a question that we should ask before we retire isn't only, do I have enough money? Maybe we ought to also ask is, where am I going to feel useful at? What am I going to contribute to? Where am I going to look forward to? And who's going to need what I still have to offer? Because I don't want the rest of my life to be about sitting around and waiting for another day to pass. And, you know, I still got a lot of things to do. I've still got a lot of things I want to learn. And apparently I've still got a lot of things I want to talk about. And so, anyhow, I'm curious about something. So, if you're retired, do you miss being at work? And not the job, and not necessarily the paycheck. I'm talking about that feeling that, you know, somebody depended on you. Let me know down in the comments, because I have a feeling I'm not the only person who's experienced this. And if you're approaching retirement, think about it before that final day comes. You know, don't just retire from something. Make sure you got something to retire to. So, with that being said, I'm going to close it out. And I'm Joe here, with Just Sharing Life. If you enjoyed what I have said today here, please like, subscribe. Like I said, you know, you can leave a comment down there. I try to read all of them. And I'm not certain. I'm not certainly not trying to say that I know everything, because I don't have all the answers. I'm just sharing what I've learned along the way, and that's the best that I can do. So with that, I'll see you next time. You have a great one. Be blessed, and thank you for watching.